shift gears to the Bruins game on Thursday against the Sharks, where Boston, unfortunately, wasn't able to take advantage of early opportunities in that game. Next thing you know, they find themselves behind the 8 ball, down a couple of goals, and they were unable to get themselves back into the game. And while the Bruins outshot the Sharks 41-28, yes, you could say that they deserved better. But here's the thing, and I've talked about this in the past. Hockey is not a sport where you deserve to win a game simply because you outshot or outgenerated a team or outchanced them. Yes, that does indicate that you were able to get to your game more so than the other team was. But hockey's about execution at the end of the day. Hockey's about situational awareness at the end of the day. So it's difficult for me to see the Bruins outshoot the Sharks 41-28 and say they should have won the game because of that when the Bruins had a power play early in the third period down 2-0 with a chance to climb back into the game and cut San Jose's lead in half. And instead of doing that, they have a soft face-off, a soft board battle, a soft back check, and the Sharks get a shorthanded goal 10 seconds into a Bruins power play to go up 3-0. Well, at that point, the game's over. So I'm glad the Bruins had some shots, especially in the first half of that game. But their situational awareness and their offensive execution and their defensive details ultimately were not good enough in this game, and it cost them. When I say defensive details, what do I mean? Well, look at the first goal of the game by San Jose. Charlie McAvoy has the puck, and he goes up the boards not once but twice in the neutral zone, and it gets shot down not once but twice. And then he loses his footing in transition, and San Jose ends up with a backdoor easy tap-in goal for Michael Misa, 1-0 Sharks. Okay, so in that situation, Charlie shouldn't be forcing the puck up the boards multiple times where there's too much traffic. Go to your partner, or use your feet and do a reverse and go the other way. Go up the other side of the ice. But you cannot just go into traffic constantly. It wasn't smart. So that cost the Bruins a goal. San Jose's second goal was a bit misfortunate for the Bruins. I mean, it was a Macklin Celebrini on the power play, whiffed on a shot, and gets a second opportunity and fires a wrist shot that goes off the chest of Tyler Toffoli, who stops a puck with his crest that otherwise would have been going wide, and it drops right in front of him and past Swayman for a 2-0 lead for the Sharks. The third goal of the game was a breakaway that I had just previously mentioned, where the Bruins are on the power play and they lose the face-off, they lose a board battle, and they aren't wise enough to the back check. David's late back checking, Charlie pinches, and again, it's 3-0. So at that point, the game's pretty much over. And if it wasn't over then, it certainly was over after William Eklund had probably the goal of the season, if not one of the goals of the year, where he goes around Andrew Peeke, gets a shot on Swayman, and while Eklund is falling to the ice, bats the rebound out of midair under the crossbar. It was a beautiful individual effort, and Andrew Peeke got absolutely worked on the play. But at that point, it's 4-0. However, to the Bruins' credit, with the final 10 minutes to go in the game, they did finally make some forward line changes. They had David Pastrnak playing with Fraser Minton and Marat Husnudinov, where I've been talking about that for a bit now. I've wanted Elias Lindholm away from Pastrnak for quite some time. Whether you agree with me or not, no problem. That's my personal preference and opinion. I think that Elias Lindholm is an offensive net negative at 5-on-5, and I think that it's bringing down David Pastrnak. I think his lack of playmaking, his lack of speed, his lack of confidence, his lack of finishability at 5-on-5, it is all it's not helping David get out of the slump that he's currently in too. So I was glad to see Marco Sturm finally, when it's 4-0, make some forward line changes between the first and third line, because the second line's been outstanding. Nobody should be touching them. Don't punish them and split them up to try to get some other lines going. Mix up the two lines that aren't going. And that's what Marco Sturm did later in regulation. And 10 seconds into a shift together, Husnudinov, Minton, and Pastrnak score a goal. Surprise, surprise. Now, obviously, I'm kind of tongue-in-cheek with that. Like, I don't think that anybody expected him to score a goal 10 seconds into it. And it was kind of a garbage goal, to be honest with you. The puck probably shouldn't have gone in. But nonetheless, they just looked better. They looked quicker. And to be fair to Elias Lindholm and Morgan Geekie, I thought with Alex Steves, they looked pretty good too. So there's something about right now the Elias Lindholm, David Pastrnak combo where they aren't playing well together 5-on-5. I'm not saying that Geekie has to leave Pasternak's line. I'm saying Elias Lindholm does. That's what I'm saying. So if you want to go Pastrnak and Husnudinov at center and Geekie on the wing, sure. But then you have a situation where what do you do with Fraser Minten and Elias Lindholm? Because you're not going to put Elias Lindholm on the wing, I don't think, for Minten to play center. So I just think right now they should stick with Pastrnak, Husnudinov, and Minten, and then do Geekie, Elias Lindholm, and either Alex Steves or Mikey Eyssimont. We'll get to that a little bit more in just a second, but let's go to Marco Sturm, not after the game, but after practice on Friday. He was asked about the forward lines because while I just mentioned he went to Pastrnak, Husnudinov, and Minten later in the game against the Sharks, and then Geekie, Steves, and Lindholm, at practice, he went back to Pastrnak, Husnudinov, and Elias Lindholm, and then Morgan Geekie, Fraser Minten, and Alex Steves. And Scott McLaughlin, who, shout out Scotty, my co-host on the Skate podcast, asked the question that we were all wondering. You go to certain lines after you're down 4-0, they look great, and then the next practice, not even 24 hours later, you go back to the lines that weren't generating shit. So Scott asked it a little bit more eloquently than I just put it, but let's get to Scott's question and Marco's answer.
What goes into sticking with the lines you had today versus maybe going with the lines you ended with last night?
Don't look at that. Honestly, we talked about it. I thought about it. I'm not there yet. Might be different tomorrow. I just have to think about. I didn't want to rush anything, and we still don't forget. It was a big game we lost, unfortunately, but we are still in a good spot. We're a playoff team right now, and again, I'm not gonna decide on anything just based on the result last night. But maybe I do. It's just I didn't want to rush anything. That's all.
Well, Marco, I mean, what do you mean don't look into it? They were your lines. No, listen, I'm a big Marco guy. I love Marco Sturm. Loved him as a player, and I'm a big fan of him as a coach. I will say he is being annoyingly stubborn with the reluctancy to take Elias Lindholm away from David Pastrnak for an extended amount of time. And, when Marco says that he doesn't want to be too reactionary to one game, referring to the Bruins loss to the Sharks and guys not being up to snuff, because Marco, after the game, to his credit, he did say that he needs more from his top guys, that our top guys have to be our top guys. Now, I would argue, and I said this online, there are two types of top guys. There's type A, where you're a top guy because you have more speed and skill than anybody else on the team, or just about. And then there's type B, where you're a top guy by default because you lack type A players. And to me, David Pastrnak is type A. Morgan Geekie is emerging in my eyes as type A. Elias Lindholm is type B, where Lindholm is a top guy because the Bruins don't have a true top center right now. Okay. So I kind of push back anyway, but fine. He is one of their top guys by default, so I'm not going to split hairs. But when Marco says he doesn't want to be too reactionary because of one game, it's not just one game, my friend. It's not. Elias Lindholm on the season is, yes, he's fifth in point scoring for Boston, and I don't want to take that away from him, okay? He has 40 points in 50 games or 52 games, 58 games. I can't read my chicken scratch. I think it's 58 games. 12 goals, 28 assists, 40 points. So he's producing fine enough, well enough. Again, 5th on the team in overall scoring. But at 5-on-5, Elias Lindholm on the season is 12th on the Bruins roster in 5-on-5 point scoring. And I hear you out there who say, why are you harping on 5-on-5 production? There's more to the game. There's 3-on-3. There's 4-on-4. There's 5-on-4. There's 5-on-3. There's 6-on-5. I get it all. I know that. I know how important those situations are too. It's all part of the game. But my simple rebuttal is, where is most of the game played? The game is mostly played at 5-on-5. That is an objective fact. So it seems irresponsible for me to analyze a hockey team and a hockey player and be told, well, don't worry about his lack of 5-on-5 scoring because he's scoring on the power play. I mean, that's letting him off the hook. I know he's been pretty effective on the power play, and that's great. But that doesn't negate the fact that he's been an offensive enigma at 5-on-5. So furthermore, to Marco's statement, it's not just one game, Marco. In fact, over the last 10 games at 5-on-5, Morgan Geekie is ranked 15th on the Bruins in 5-on-5 scoring with 2 goals, 2 points. Elias Lindholm is ranked 17th on the Bruins. 17th. There's only 20 some odd players in the roster. He's ranked 17th on the team in 5-on-5 scoring with 2 goals and 2 points over his last 10 games. That's 4 total 5-on-5 points combined between Morgan Geekie and Elias Lindholm, who are supposed to be 2 of your top forwards at 5-on-5 the last 10 games. In fact, those 2 players have combined for 0 goose egg, 0 5-on-5 points in the last 8 games since Boston returned from the Olympic break, since the NHL returned from the Olympic break, okay? Now, let's talk about how that may be affecting David Pastrnak, because David Pastrnak is responsible for his own production or lack thereof. I'm not going to put other players, I'm not going to blame other players for David's lack of producing lately, but in that same span, over David's last 10 games, he's ranked 9th on the Bruins in 5-on-5 scoring. 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points. So those are your top 3 forwards in theory, right? They're supposed to be. That's your top line. Supposed to be your top line. And they're ranked 9th, 15th, and 17th on the team in 5-on-5 scoring the last 10 games. That's a pretty decent sample size. Is it a half a season sample? No. But 10 games is 10 games. And I was looking earlier before the podcast at the 20-game sample, and it's not much better. It's a little bit better for David, a little bit better for Elias and Morgan, respectively. But even if you take that stat back to the last 20 games, it's still not that great. So they have not been playing very, very productive at 5-on-5. And even on the power play has been struggling mightily since the Olympic break ended. In fact, the power play and the penalty kill have kind of switched places. Before the Olympic break, the power play was clicking all season long at a pretty high rate. In fact, I think they were top 5 all year, pretty much, in the power play. They've now dipped to 7th, I think, in the NHL in the power play. And the penalty kill was it was top 10 for the first month or two. And then the last couple of months before the Olympic break, it plummeted. And to the point where it was the biggest point of emphasis for the Bruins coaching staff during the Olympic break was fixing the penalty kill. And since they've gotten back from break, the PK has been pretty good. And they have climbed from 24th to 23rd. It's nothing crazy, but the PK has been better of late, and the penalty kill or the power play has struggled. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the power play is struggling when these players are struggling at 5-on-5. Why? Because they feed into each other. If you're producing well in the power play, you'll probably have more confidence at 5-on-5 and vice versa. And so I just think that they're struggling at 5-on-5 because the line combinations I don't think have been optimal right now. And on the power play, they're overcompensating for their lack of success at 5-on-5. And so they're looking for perfect plays. And they're trying to sit back and find the perfect passing lanes and the perfect shooting options. And that's not how you perform on the power play. Now, the Bruins power play, as I said, has been really good all year. So I don't want to condescend what's been a very successful unit, but the last little while it hasn't been great. And I think it's because rather than playing on their toes and hunting loose pucks and being like dogs on raw meat and utilizing the extra player you have on the ice, and rather than just getting pucks to the net and taking the ice that's given to you, and like, for example, if Pavel Zacha gets the puck on the goal line, instead of just looking back to David or Charlie at the point and passing it around the perimeter, if you have ice, if you have 5-6 feet, take that puck right to the net mount. Try and stuff a shot in. Try to create some havoc in the crease. Maybe there's a loose rebound that Elias Lindholm puts in, or Morgan Geekie puts in, or Geekie gets a puck and finds David in the slot for a one-timer because the penalty killers are scrambling. If you win an opening faceoff, or it's a draw, everybody has to get in and help out on the draws. If there's a loose puck on the boards, you have to outnumber the penalty kill. What good is being on the power play if you can't outnumber the penalty killers on loose pucks, right? So if you're outnumbering them, you should win those battles, okay? Like, win draws, get pucks to the net early and often on the power play. The Bruins ultimately are just overthinking right now, and they're reacting instead of acting, okay? So I want to get to Marco Sturm again. He was asked at practice about the struggles of Elias Lindholm lately.
When it comes to Elias's game, is there something that needs to be unlocked there to kind of get him back on track?
Unlock, I don't know. He's really reliable all year long. He's been pretty steady. But again, in this certain time of the year, I think that's where, again, talk about best players, that's where they come to shine, and they're going to be the difference. And I think that's something we need him to do more, to be more a best player, because he can be. So it's not October anymore. It's not November anymore. It's March. It's crunch time. So we just need just a bit more.
I mean, yes, you need a lot more, actually, from Elias Lindholm. And again, I'm talking specifically at 5-on-5, okay? So, in my opinion, I just don't see it with him. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer on the guy, but he doesn't have an above-average shot. He doesn't have above-average skating. He doesn't have above-average one-on-one playmaking ability. He's a above-average face-off guy. We all know that. He's excellent at the face-off dot. Excellent. Can not even try to take that away from him. And I think, by and large, I think he's a responsible forward. And I think he's a very defensive-minded forward. I think that Elias Lindholm, I don't fear that teams are going to take advantage of the Bruins offensively when he's on the ice. I think he's a smart defensive player. Do I think he's the most physical? No. Do I think he wins the most one-on-one battles? No, he's probably average at that. Okay, but again, I just feel like sometimes your best defense is your ability to play offense and your ability to have your opposition defending. Make them tired, make them defend. And that's a underrated, sentiment. I don't think it's talked about enough. Keeping the puck 200 feet away from your own goal is the easiest way to be good defensively. And I just don't think that Elias Lindholm is a great, play driver, play extender. He's just out there. And a lot of times the puck dies on his stick. Now, with that said, he has had successful seasons throughout his career. And he's shown that he can produce, and that he can be a net positive offensively. He's even shown it at times in Boston. Okay, like last year with Morgan Geekie and David Pastrnak towards the end of the year, Elias Lindholm was very much an effective player. Now, I mentioned Scott McLaughlin earlier because he asked that question to Marco Stern, but we were talking on the skate pod earlier today about that juxtaposition between Elias Lindholm last year with Boston and Elias Lindholm at times this year 5-on-5. And Scott brought up maybe it's the system change. Maybe under Joe Sacco there was a little bit more freedom for these players. Maybe the lack of pressure to make the playoffs because they'd already sold and they were just going out there and playing free. Maybe that helped a guy like Elias Lindholm. I think there's some credence to that. But at the same time, I think that if a system is negating your ability to do anything offensively at 5-on-5, then I have to think it's the player, not the system, because I don't think there's any system that just completely takes away your ability to generate and create. I think at a certain point, hockey's hockey. So, but still, like Lindholm has had his moments where he's been fine, especially at 5-on-5. He's been fine on the power play the whole time. This is not a power play situation that I'm talking. This is not a power play conversation I'm having. Okay, it's a 5-on-5 conversation, and it's a conversation because, as I said earlier, 5-on-5 is it's where the game is mostly played. Okay, objectively, and also in the Sharks game, like I said, the first line and the third line were playing like dog shit. They had no chemistry. They had no extended zone time. Not a ton of grade A chances. They were just out there. They're out there for just taking up time and space. They were taking up. They weren't doing anything. The second line was, but the first and third were just they weren't doing much of anything. And then when Marco made that switch, maybe it was because they knew the game was already over and they were just saying, fuck it, let's go out there and just do what we can do. But David looked way better with Husnudinov and Fraser Minton. They were moving quicker. My eyes weren't deceiving me. I'm telling you all that line was moving a lot faster and had a lot more creativity and speed than the line did previously with Lindholm there. And then conversely, like I said earlier in the episode, Elias Lindholm, Geekie, and Alex Steves, they look good too. They did. So I don't know if it's a specific thing right now with David and Elias and Morgan where they just aren't clicking. But like, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I'm telling you, those last 7-8 minutes, Geekie, Steves, and Elias Lindholm, they almost had 2 or 3 goals. And Pastrnak, Husnudinov, and Minton, they did have a goal, and they had some more chances too. So again, I would stick with it. I would stick with those lines. And Marco told the media not to read into the practice lines he had earlier today that were back to the previous lines, which had Lindholm with Pastrnak. But either way, these lines, I think, are subject to change regardless.